Thoughts on the Republican debate? Well, first of all, it was a hell of a lot better than the CNBC debate in the sense that it wasn't about a reality show, if you will. Um, the problem really, well, first of all, let me say that I think, in my view, and I know a lot of the mainstream media thought that Ben Carson did a really good job. I didn't think he did at all. Again, he was full of political platitudes, but there's very little substance. I mean, he literally increased his flat rate tax by 50% since the last debate.
Well, what you see with Carson is a stark contrast in delivery to everybody else. Because everybody else is mad and they're yelling or they're stating everything and like they stood in front of the mirror and practiced their shtick. Not everybody, but most of them. And the ones that don't, like Trump, he's already loud and boisterous and blah 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 blah. And Tortoise is a non-factor at this point. But Carson just comes across as that wise, soft-spoken guy, so it contrasts everybody else so sharply that it makes him more likable. You know, because Carly just seems like a mean bitch, you know, when she's spouting off her facts, and you just look at her and she's like, my God, this is the Wicked Witch of the West. And you contrast that with somebody like Carson, and he seems a lot more, he appears likable and sensible, even if he's speaking complete nonsense.
Well, I totally agree with that. He's a likable gentleman. However, I think this debate, especially because it was Fox Business, was really focused on, okay, give us some meat on this bone of how you're going to make the country great. Not are you a likable person? I mean, that's okay. That's wonderful, but how are we going to fix the underemployment, the unemployment? You know, when you have 40 million Americans who have left the workforce because they can't find work.
I think I've come up with the Republican solution.
Okay.
Bring back slavery. It's basically bring back slavery, except by that, you know, pay people like a few bucks an hour, have them work multiple jobs, get rid of all regulation. It's basically bring back slavery and start a war to protect the slaveholders, to protect their interests, and start a war, get the slaves to fight the war. I mean, seriously, hey, let's bring back slavery. Let's enslave everybody and mask it in. Well, we want to give everybody. I mean, it was almost laughable when Tortoise was saying, well, you know, when they throw in this. Well, I met this person on the road, and his name is Jeb. Wait, that's my name. His name was cool name though, and you know they're living out in Pump whatever, and you know that extra $2,000 they're gonna get from my tax plan. Well, they want to go back home and start a business.
I know.
Yeah, they're gonna take $2,000, move, you know, have whatever's left from the move, if anything, and then start a business. I mean, come on, Jebby boy. He spends more than that going out to dinner with his bros.
Yeah.
You know, so they're completely out of. They just have no idea. And I mean, yeah, maybe some people start a business with $2,000, but I mean, come on. So they think getting rid of all the regulations for all the corporations is going to allow somebody to take a couple $100 from their paycheck and start a business. And what's the percentage of new businesses that fail? So, I mean, it's basically let's give big business, let's get rid of all the regulations, and they're masking it in, well, it'll give the little guy a chance to start their own business. Well, they still can't get any capital because the banks aren't going to give it to them. And with all this, without any regulation, they're certainly not going to give it to them, or they're going to give it to them and then they're going to take it all back and then some, which is what was happening before without the regulation. So basically, their platform is slavery, I would say. Underneath it all, they have a platform of slavery. And the sad thing is people will buy it. Go, yeah, let's drill more. Let's have a bigger army. Let's get rid of all regulation from everything. And let's lower taxes on all the rich people. Yeah, the income creators.
Well, I just was shaking my head when exclamation point made that comment about the $2,000 myself. It's having started a lot of companies and having an incubator. I kind of get the lunacy in that, but yeah, it was. If you really look at it, and I'm happy you call it slavery because it's not really about black people. Legally, they want to enslave everyone, right?
No, it's just let's have a slave class and the 0.1% and a slave class. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just do this, people. You know, let's give
Yes.
you let's give you your big opportunity to be our slave. And
To live, or what is Carson's thing when he says the American dream to? He says some ridiculous thing that I can't remember
well,
now.
not everybody has the brains to go to Yale and be a neurosurgeon. You know, he's trying to judge everybody else by his brilliance. And let's face it, not everybody is that brilliant. You know, not everybody can get a ride to Yale and become a neurosurgeon. That's not most people in the hood. He is the exception of the exception of the exception. So he
Yeah.
can't judge everybody by
Well,
his own
that's
success.
like saying, hey, you could be Michael Jordan, right?
Right.
And this is lunacy as well. The number of players that make it in the NBA is so tiny. So you're absolutely right. I think we also saw uh, Rubio and Cruz kind of stepping up a little bit last night from a political standpoint. Again, it was totally scripted. You can tell Ted Cruz has done this a million times in front of the. I mean, he's a politician. So is Rubio. Of course, Rubio kind of jumped everybody by putting out his political ad where Jeb Bush is endorsing him, even for president, right before the debate. So that was pretty hilarious. But you know, uh, if you really, everybody said go to my website and look at the plan. So I went to the websites and actually none of the plans really work. None of the plans will. They're all these, as I've said before, tangential solutions. I will say this that um, of the plans that were presented, Trump's is actually one of the worst. And the reason is I can't imagine what Donald Trump is thinking when he wants the richest Americans, richest. You're rich if you make $200,000 as a family.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 225 in his plan. This is ludicrous. I mean, you know what it costs to live here in California. You're not wealthy when you have a household. Say you have 4 kids and you're making 220,000. You're wealthy. This is ridiculous. So, and yet he wants corporations only to pay 15%. Well, I don't know how you give corporations a bigger break than the American people. Now, I do agree with other things like the death tax and alternative minimum tax. Those things should be abolished. It's ridiculous. When you die, your heirs should pay an additional tax. This is retarded. So,
Well, the one thing they all point out is I'm going to close all the loopholes. That seems to be their answer is closing all loopholes. A
well,
flat tax and closing all loopholes. But
well,
really, loopholes is everybody's bread and butter. And closing loopholes, what that really screws is small businesses because loopholes is what keeps, you know,
I don't see it that way. I think we have the tax code is a Lawyers and Accountants Relief Act. That's what it is. Um, if Cruz and I here's kind of the other thing. Um, Cruz wants a flat rate for everybody. I think it should be. I think it should be scaled a bit, but I would make the top rate something on the order of 15%. Okay, so, and I would have that kick in somewhere around $500,000. And here's the reason why. If you did get rid of all those regulations, the bureaucrats that would be cut out in the IRS would have to find real meaningful work, not be in the federal bureaucracy, which they don't really care who gets elected because they're going to do whatever they want anyway. The top person, yes, they'll listen to Obama and say, go after these Tea Party people, or whoever the next one is. They'll be go after those crazy liberals, those Bernie Sanders people, go after them. So obviously they have too much money because they're giving it to Bernie. But if you did, for a small business, first of all, the regulations, it hurts small business in some instances. The real problem with small business is getting capital. And why do most businesses fail? Because they don't have enough capital.
Yeah, but you know what? If you have your $2,000 saved up from the Bush tax cut, there's your capital right there. There's your capital. You know, another interesting thing is the Republicans pretty much coronated Hillary already. Everybody's already assuming we're running against Hillary. They've already dubbed her the leader. Like everybody.
Well, a couple of the people mentioned Bernie.
They mentioned it, but they didn't mention him as being the nominee. And that socialist that's running against her.
I agree.
That commie pinko old man running against her, you know?
I agree, and they were, equally derogatory with regard to Bernie.
Let's run down the list. Let's go down each candidate. Let me hear your analysis. Kasich? What's his name? Kasich.
He's apparently, when he was in Congress, he was the only one doing anything because he did everything. He made the economy grow. He balanced the budget was balanced, as we know, and Cruz was right. The whole thing hinges. In fact, everything hinges on the fact that we have to have a growing economy. The crime will go down. People will elevate themselves if you have a growing economy. Okay, so because during the Bill Clinton's administration, the economy was growing at a pretty healthy clip. He took credit for balancing the budget, for growing the economy. He's kind of almost like the Republican version of Bernie. Is that his heart is in the right place. He's well-meaning. Does he have all the solutions? No. Does he take credit for everything that happened since he's been born? Yes.
He seemed a little desperate. He seemed a little like, I got to get in there. I've got to establish myself. People got to be talking about me, and I need to draw a contrast, which he did with the illegal immigration thing, which really is not going to play to the Republican base very well. So I don't know if that was a good move. But, I mean, he seems like he might be in the top tier of competence of that group, but his delivery is bad, and he came across as a little angry and desperate, I thought.
Yeah, he's sort of like about to slip into the JV with the other JV people. Although, again, he's got experience. I don't know whether experience translates to competence. I'm not positive about that. And I think rather than look backwards on what happened, what we really have to focus on is what is he going to do looking forward. So you're right. He was very on edge. You could tell, and I think he had a couple of tete-a-tetes with Trump. So. And of course that's his mission, is he has to get himself out there and get noticed. And if you attack Donald Trump, you get noticed.
He wanted to get people talking about him. Let's jump across the room to Rand Paul.
Rand Paul. Rand Paul, every once in a while he actually says something that actually makes sense. Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But...
Well, with Rand Paul, everything makes sense in Rand Paul world. And it does make sense. If you go into Rand Paul world, he's great. He knocked it out of the park. If you're in Rand Paul world.
Yeah.
If you're not in Rand Paul world.
Yeah, I thought he was at his Rand Paul world best when he was attacking Carly Fiorina in the and about talking to Putin and so forth. But he did make this statement that, which is correct, is that the U.S. spends more than the next 10 countries put together on defense. So, saying we're going to spend more. We have the most powerful military in the world. We simply don't use it effectively. So I tell you, before I forget, I have to mention, I did like Trump's idea of taking the oil money from Iraq and giving it to the people who got injured to make sure they're taken care of. Why not? Why can congressmen be covered for life and not have to wait 200 days to see a doctor, but the people who, put themselves in harm's way for the benefit of the country can't do that? It's insane. So I did like that. But yeah, Rand Paul, again, he as you say, he's in his own little world. And if I don't know how he's actually still in the race other than ego.
Well, one takeaway is I believe, and this goes down to the JV, and we'll talk about the JV later.
Mm-hmm.
I still think everybody believes they can win. Everybody believes they can win, and it's still open. Nobody's been coronated yet. Now let's move over to Carly. The one next to Rand Paul.
Yeah, Carly was. She looks, from body language and facial expression, almost like an attack dog or something.
Well, she's like debate team queen.
Yeah.
She's like the queen of the debate team. And really has got to be playing for VP. Somebody's got to go, man, we need her as VP because she's like the on-point attack dog.
Yeah. Well, she might actually be good in that role. Now, the question is, and what really... She does the Republican line, which is the only problem with business is we have taxes are too high and we have too many regulations. That's their whole solution. And that is, as lame as it can get. And that's not going to separate her from anyone. Ironically, and remember, she wasn't an entrepreneur herself. She came in through big business. But here she was in Silicon Valley. She didn't make any comments really about how she was going to develop small businesses, the regulation, which we all know that's the only place jobs are created. Trump still thinks if you have these companies repatriate the money into the U.S., that they'll create jobs. They're not going to create jobs. They're going to give out dividends and they're going to buy back stock. They're not going to employ anyone. So Carly had that perfect opportunity to say, I've seen how companies grow. I know how it, and she didn't do that, which to me was the failure of...
Well, wasn't she fired from HP?
She was fired, and if you look at it, this, I believe during her tenure, and of course it was during right after the .com bubble burst, but during her tenure, the actual share price of HP lost 40 or 50% of its value. So, if in her world you're judged, if it's a meritocracy, you're judged on how well you did in making our company valuable, she lost half the value of the company.
Yeah, she seems in it for VP. I mean, there's a chance she'll get picked as VP because she covers the woman thing, she covers the, know my facts, attack dog thing, but she makes Hillary look really likable. That's how unlikable Carly is. She just got that little scowl on her face, pointing her finger, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, she was... God. I think it's... And sometimes women can do this to try to, overcompensate because I'm a woman. They go, psycho. She's, borderline psycho.
Good highlights, though. Good hair. I think she's in with that's the one thing in common with all these people's amazing hair.
Yeah.
All the women of politics and the women who cover politics, great hair, great highlights, great cuts.
Speaking of that, I'm so sorry. But I've got it on on the TiVo, so I will be able to watch it. But I'm so sorry I missed Trish Regan's legs on the early
Oh,
debate.
we'll get to that. We'll get to the JV after our main debate. But all right, next to Carly, we had Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz is well, I would say the highlight for me of Ted Cruz was realizing the only way that we don't wreck Social Security, Medicare, and all the, entitlements that were already granted to people who actually, in Social Security standpoint, it's their money. They already put it in. I will also say I liked, well, so anyway, Ted Cruz is all about growth. He's absolutely right. That is the key. If we keep, creating, and they made a good point that during Bush's presidency, we actually created very few jobs. Obama has done a slightly better job than that, but it's still half of what we need. Averaging half the growth we need in jobs is ridiculous.
Well, here's the answer. Compete with the rest of the world and pay Americans $3 an hour. And everybody will have a job.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the simpleton Republican approach, which of course we know doesn't work. So, but I think the good thing was, and something that slips through in his plan that people don't realize is when you have a flat tax, all of those deductions that are being paid come back to you anyway. So, the FICA things and so forth, you don't pay those. So I think that's why I said, ironically, even at 10%, his plan is probably the closest to actually working. And again, when he said abolish the Department of Energy, why the hell do we have a Department of Energy anyway? I mean, this is ludicrous. So,
well, that's what Sarah Palin would like to run if she is in the Trump administration. So you got to keep that one open for her. You got to.
You got to.
You got to give her another gig. But also Cruz had a Rick Perry moment where he repeated two of the same. It seemed like a fair enough mistake. Trump made a bigger blunder, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, and so did Rubio, made a blunder too. So, but I think it's certainly not easy standing up in front of a national TV audience and having people, fire your things. However, that's the job. When you're president, that's what happens.
The other thing about Cruz is, for all his economic sense or nonsense, he's still an insane religious zealot. And he brings all that zealotry to the table. And that makes him scary.
Well,
he brings hardcore zealotry to the table, and he's not one for compromise, which maybe people like, but if he's not compromising where you want a little compromise, it's dangerous.
It always amazes me that people who are soundly Christian forget the basic tenets of Christianity when they're applying their religious beliefs. So tolerance. There is no tolerance. Okay.
Yeah, I will. Cruz gets credit for not seeming as crazy as he is when he's presenting stuff. But beneath all that is a medievalist in his zealotry.
Well, yeah, I think he's appealing to that sort of the people who are now not following Huckleberry, so they think maybe Ted is our guy. Ted might be our guy. And so Ted has to play that card for now.
Well,
however, he's a politician. He is a professional politician no matter what he says. And you can see it in his delivery that he is practice this? You know.
Oh yeah, well, he was like a debate champion in school. He was
Well,
a national debate champ.
yeah, but I believe, is a practical politician in the sense that I don't think if he actually were elected, I don't think he'd be as wacko as we think he would be. I think he would go, wait a second, okay, so I got it. I played the game perfectly. I dragged all of those people who were going to vote on a single issue, which was, religious rights, and I got every evangelical to vote for me, and I'm in. Now, I'm a politician, so I'm going to do really what politicians do. That's the way I see him. Now, I just wonder how come we don't have more like a middle-of-the-road person there. I mean, I don't see Ben Carson as a middle-of-the-road person.
No, well, Ben Carson also gets the zealotry vote.
Yeah.
Because he speaketh zealotry. He's basing his tax system on tithing, and so he speaketh zealotry. So if anything, the Carson people would move over to Cruz because they who likes a fellow zealot more than a zealot. So all right, so let's now jump over to the delightful, sweet little Marco Rubio, who I guarantee you practices his smile in the mirror with a team of smile coaches at least a few times a day. All right, time to get with the smile coaches. Let's go. Clearly, when you saw when they put on him at the beginning, clearly smile coached by a team of smile coaches.
Yeah, I would say they have him at every angle. They're critiquing him. Yeah. I think in his own way, Marco made the biggest hit of the night with his 21st century comment. And when they said, look at Hillary's background, and everybody laughed. They were like, her background, Trump called her out, said, she's the worst Secretary of State in history.
But she's still the best Republican candidate out there. I mean, the Republicans get a candidate. That's why they were probably all pimping her as the nominee, because she is really one of them, masked in I'm going to flip-flop on everything.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And ironically, if she were up there debating, she would look more like they do than even some of the other people up there.
Right.
But I think that moment when he played two cards there. One, people want change. They don't want the same thing. The country has had it. Okay, so they want change. So he played two cards. Number one, the card is that we have to have change. She's more of the same. She's she's part of the Washington insider establishment. Nothing's gonna, just as we said, if she gets elected, everything's gonna remain the same. That's the way it works. The second card he played was she's old. That was the underlying sense, is that she's old and out of touch, and I'm the guy for the 21st century. So I would say that was the big highlight for him of the night. And there are probably a lot of millennials who probably thought the same thing, like, she is old. And I mean, she's...
but, millennials, who they love the most?
Bernie.
And Bernie's older than all of them.
But Bernie is not... But again, that's in the context of Washington establishment. So you can't... You don't throw Bernie into that pot. He's not the Washington establishment. So
you're saying people are going, I want fresh young Washington establishment. I want a fresh young prime Ricky Ricardo looking.
I think what people really wanted was somebody who wasn't on the stage. I mean, somebody who had certain aspects. Sure, they would like to have a...
Because Rubio, when he was going down all his points of what he quote unquote believes in to make a better America, it was basically all the talking points of big money donor, big money corporation donor talk points. You know, more energy, bigger military, no regulation, you know, free for all, and then he'll throw in the occasional, you know, strengthen family thing. But it basically, his platform is big money. I'm a big money donor shill, and here's their platform, and I'm the guy who's going to tell it to you. I don't think a lot of people are going to see through that. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you are looking through that. It's basically, hey, I'm the messenger for all these guys a lot older than I am writing my paychecks, and I'm not telling you who they are because a lot of his ads, they're funded through nonprofit organizations where you can't even know who the donors are. So he's the ideal shill, and that's why he probably doesn't even know what he's talking about. He just has to memorize it and deliver it. And he has his team of people going, all right, Marco, we're going to go through the smile section. Let's hear you say all those talking points again. Let's go through this. I don't care if you understand it or not. Just sound like you understand it. That's all you got to do. All you got to do is say it and sound like you mean it. And we're going to help you do it.
Yeah, his comment that the whole country is built on the family. We have, and of course it is a problem today that we don't have, you know, united families. But part of that reason is because I think you now have 40% of the family households in America have the woman as the number one breadwinner. Why? Well, because we have 40 million people who have given up looking for a job. So it's not really the family being together, it's having an economy that's growing enough so that you can have a family unit where the, you know.
Yeah, well, Santorum, the family man, talked about that in the JV, but JV is another discussion.
Yeah.
So, you know, basically, little Marco Rubio is good at spewing out what his donors are telling him to spew out, and he's pretty good at that compared to everybody else, and has an awesome team of smile coaches.
Yeah, he's a professional politician. There's no question.
Right. Bought and sold. All right, let's talk Trump.
I don't give Donald high marks for last night. I just think he said, we had heard everything he said before. Everything. Right. And so and if you really go look at his plan and read about even his trade things, he's focused on China only. Okay, we have a roughly $55 billion trade imbalance with China. In a $15 or $16 trillion economy, that's nothing. That is nothing.
Well, and you know, too, his fascination or obsession with China led to his blunder of the night when they were talking about TTP, and he just went off on China. And then, little Rand Paul goes, you know, China's not in the agreement, Donald. And you could see in Trump's face, like, whoops.
See, that's where, again, for him, it's all about being like my big personality, and I don't really have to know what the hell I'm saying. And if he uses iconic one more time, you know.
And, you know, look into TTP, dude, just off topic for 1 second. That is bringing slavery back in a big way. Just look into it. It's bringing slavery back in a big way. And that's why the Republicans dig it so much, you know, because it's right in line, and it just shows you how much Obama has sold out to somebody that he's behind this crazy thing. But anyway, back to Trump.
I totally agree with you on that, and you're right. You know, the Rand Paul did a great job. He's not an idiot. He simply has a distorted.
He's Rand Paul world. In Rand Paul world, the dude is a genius.
But yeah, so Trump, again, look, when you start off in business by getting $1 million loan from your father, it was only $1 million. Well, $1 million in 1970 was like.
And did you see the interview where he said that? Like, he rolled it off like in his eyes, like, well, it's just $1 million, which was like $10 million back then. Yeah, but to him, it was just like, what, you know? Huh?
Yeah, and this is why he doesn't get small business and how to get things started. And Matt Lauer said, wait a second, $1 million is.
He should talk to exclamation point's friend who's going to take his $2,000 after he moves back to his home state and start his own business.
Insane. Yeah, we're going to move from Iowa to South Carolina. And, oh, by the way, we'll have
Whatever's left over from the moving costs, we're
we'll
gonna
have
a lemonade stand. We're gonna get some powdered lemonade and some water, and we're gonna set up a little stand in front of our mobile home, and that's gonna be our new business.
no, in front of our rent-a-van, which is now overdue and we can't afford to pay. So, yeah, it's just back to Trump. So he his comment too about Putin was just laughable. Like I know we can be bros. I mean, I spent time in the green room with him. You know, and it was
Yeah, Trump didn't help himself, but he probably didn't hurt himself with the people that already support him.
he has the only thing about Trump is he has a message that we're going to make America great again. That's his whole message.
Right. Yeah, and you're right. He's just regurgitating everything we've already heard. It seemed kind of cool when he first said it. I mean, not that it was cool, but it was like, ooh, he's saying that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, okay, he said that. And so, and clearly when he's standing next to the professional politicians, you know, who are coached and groomed.
Yeah.
And like the difference between Rubio and Cruz is I think Rubio is groomed and coached every step of the way, and Cruz is just good at it.
Yeah.
You know, Cruz is just all right. I can rock this.
Yeah.
He doesn't need his team of smile people, whereas Rubio is clearly getting a lot of help to like, okay, here's your thing, memorize it. We're gonna watch you say it. We're gonna.
And the problem is the Donald's ego is so big that he won't listen to those people he probably has those people around him, but he won't listen to them.
Well, he might figure, well, I've gotten here being on the cuff, so I'm going to stay on the cuff. And the funny thing is, it seems like Carson is starting to get coached a little bit now. It seems like Carson is starting to spew out, like, all right, here's some zingers, here's some one-liners that you got to use. So he's starting to feel a little bit not quite as real. In fact, a lot not quite as real. That he's clearly trying to be a politician, and his charm is that he doesn't seem like a politician, which is part of Trump's charm on the other side of the coin, is that he's just coming out and saying stuff, you know, which leads us to the tortoise. Because the tortoise had the most on the line for this. The tortoise had to come out and rock it. And the thing is right. Well,
he didn't rock it. He was so lame, anecdotal. He and Trump just said the same thing I've been saying, except for the stupid, you know, references he made to the woman he met, and can't remember. You know, I mean, he is a horrible politician. Let's face it.
He's horrible. And what's funny is when he's talking about all this trouble in the Middle East and how the Middle East is all screwed up, dude. You know, when you fix the election in Florida, you put all that into motion, bro.
Yeah, who's involved in that? I forget, but and he's forgotten too. So,
well, and he's the other one who's coached, who clearly has, all right, let's get together, Jeb. We're going to work on this. But where little Mark Rubio can adapt,
yeah,
and can follow it and deliver it. Exclamation point just can't. It's not in him to do it.
I think you're exactly right in that. Cruz is a natural. He just
right.
rocks.
Cruz popped out of the cradle with that ability. You know, or yeah. I mean, Cruz was born with that ability. He can just do it, and he does it with like a shrilly voice. And he's not a good looking guy, but yet he can. You know, it shows how much more powerful he is over Rubio, because Rubio has prime Ricky Ricardo looks, and yet he's still, I don't think he's as good at it as Cruz is.
No.
And of all those people standing up there, Cruz is the best at it, and he's probably I don't know, like you said, how much of it is politician and pure crazy, we don't know. So whether he's being pure crazy as a politician, or if he's a politician who's pure crazy. I certainly wouldn't want to take a chance on finding out who Ted Cruz really is. That's a high risk proposition. But yeah, he's one or the other, you know.
Yeah, I suspect.
And Rubio straight up. Oh, go ahead. You suspect?
I suspect he's a politician who's playing somewhat crazy now to get a certain.
Okay, so you say politician playing the crazy card.
Yeah.
Well, Rubio just clearly straight up shill politician, but he's a pretty good shill politician. Exclamation point, shill politician, but a shitty politician.
Well, this was the problem for both the Donald and Jeb because they looked like amateurs next to these two guys they were standing by, and it was a stark contrast that really. I was disappointed that Trump hasn't gotten it yet, that he has to appear presidential and act presidential.
But I think he doesn't have presidential coaches.
He won't,
he won't have presidential coaches, like helping him out with that. And
I'm rich. I'm rich.
Right.
I don't need anything. Look, I already did it. I built myself up from nothing. Well, $1 million.
That how much is $1 million in the 70s? With inflation, what was that worth? When you factor in inflation, that's whatever. But yeah, it's like what, Kasich? Is that his name?
Kasich. Yeah.
Kasich. See, I can't even remember his name. Not a good politician. Not coming off politician like. Even though, if he had those skills, if he had those chops, he would come off pretty good, I think. But he doesn't have those chops, yeah. And so, and Carly thinks she has those chops, but she just comes off as just, just oh God, get the camera, just leave her, please. She's schooling you, like she's mad at you, and they're just painting the country to be just this wreck of everything, and and all veiled in their message of let's bring slavery back. Let's bring it back. Let's just do it. Let's just do this, people. It's about time we do it. We're gonna do it. Everyone will be. Hey, all the slaves were employed. They all had a place to sleep, and they all had something to do. 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, that's what America was built on, right?
Why not? Let's do this. Yeah, I mean, that's when America was great, right? So,
well, actually, the greatest time of America, as you know, was the 30 years after the Civil War. That was the greatest growth period in the history of the world.
Well, that's another conversation, because, that was the Gilded Age, which was...
The Gilded Age, but you know what the real difference was with the Gilded Age? And I'm not saying that the three people who controlled the Gilded Age were good people. They weren't. They were, somebody used the word gangster with them. They couldn't be that far off. But the difference was, ironically, people were investing capital back then. They would invest capital. I mean, when Rockefeller started out, he didn't have a lot of capital.
Well, let's real quick, let's just wrap up the debate.
Yeah.
So just like, what's our final thoughts on this debate?
Final thought on the debate for me, because I didn't see the JV debate, was I really wanted to see what the people in the JVs had to say, because maybe there's somebody there. I don't know. Because I think my wrapping up would be Trump didn't hurt himself, but he didn't help himself. Jeb, it's over. It's over. Carly, she reminds me of a Doberman. It's like she's... there's nothing. It's like going to a movie where there's nothing fun in the movie, and you're just being beaten down.
And the thing is, dude, when she's going through her talking points in her exceptionally mean tone, condescending manner, she looks like a Doberman. I mean, she really does. Put them side by side. Get a picture of a Doberman and get a picture of her and put them side by side and see if I'm not wrong.
I think you're right. You are absolutely right. And again, it's not that it's...
And it's not that she has a dog face.
No.
It's that she has the attitude of a barking Doberman Pinscher dog.
Yeah, that expression, like mean, and again, I think it's overcompensating, for the fact she's a woman. But I would say on the big stage, the two people who probably stood out the best, well, I'll say three. Rand Paul for, pointing out that Donald really didn't know what he was talking about on the TTP.
Even though Rand Paul, he is like a character from The Little Prince. We're going to call Rand Paul the Little Prince. I think that's what he is. He's the Little Prince because on his little world where it's only Rand Paul, man, he is a god.
Yeah, he is.
He's a god. Everything he says makes perfect sense.
Exactly. But I would say I think the two, for Republicans, not for, if you're an independent like me, there's, you're kind of worried about what you saw. If you're a Republican, you're kind of looking at Ricky Ricardo and Ted Cruz and going, hey, these boys have some chops. I mean,
prime Ricky Ricardo. Ricky Ricardo in his prime. Ricky Ricardo when he was ruling television.
Yep.
Not old Ricky Ricardo.
No.
Prime Ricky Ricardo.
Prime. So yeah, that's my takeaway on those on the 8th. There it was, and I would say the other take is I thought that they treated the candidates at Fox with a little more respect than they did at. Not a little more, a lot more. So I give them kudos for at least being somewhat professional. Although the questions really were not the greatest questions.
Well, it's still bottom line, and this was really bad in the JV, which we'll get to in a second. Is that the whole debate? It's still by Fox Business, and it's still completely pimping. Hey, let's bring slavery back. I mean, all the questions were to pimp that and to bring it forward and go, hey, everything sucks. Let's just try slavery. Communism and socialism sucks. We're becoming a communist country. Let's just try slavery. Let's do it.